Chapter and start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and the next item on our agenda is public audience. Go ahead. Go ahead.
The police department was flooded during the Ida hurricane as the water entered the basement. The cells were flooded, as were the sally port and the training room. The boiler room was also flooded. In the past, the moisture in the police department created mold that affected the health and safety of the employees. Basement workplaces are subject to mold, especially when water enters the workplace. Since this is an ongoing problem, and it is time for the town to move the police department to a standalone facility. There were over 1,000 more residents in Simsbury, as noted in the 2020 census, with a continual growth. The town has an opportunity to purchase or take the property by eminent domain. The property that was the Wagner property is now owned by Elliott Gersten. The contiguous property has 4 parcels, all owned by Elliott Gersten. 1.4 acres, 0.6 acres, 0.74 acres, and 1.67 acres. The police department should look for grants to subsidize the costs. This property would be perfect for the police department and should be reviewed by staff. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else from the public audience? Okey-doke. Next item on the agenda is correspondence. Commissioner Fogarty, please read our correspondence.
Love to. Received from a resident, Sergeant Sagan, PFC Gray. The resident fell off her deck and fractured her arm. She was grateful for the officer's prompt response and kindness. From an out-of-town resident, for Officer Arnold. A resident from out of town has his car break down in a busy intersection. Officer Arnold was able to push the vehicle out of the way to free up traffic. Officer Arnold was beyond helpful and very pleasant. I could tell that he genuinely likes assisting people in need. From a resident to PFC Buonaconti, PFC Gray. The resident was being stalked and living in fear. The 2 officers talked to the man that was stalking the resident. The stalker has not bothered the resident since. I often see Simsbury police driving through my neighborhood, and it is such a comfort to me. I will never forget these 2 officers and what they did. And that's the end of the summary.
Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda, approval of minutes, August 23rd, 2021. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion, commentary? Everyone had a chance to review them? All right. All in favor of approving the minutes for the August 23rd, 2021 special meeting? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The next item on our agenda, old business. Does anyone have any old business? Tanisha, I wanted to ask if you wanted to say anything about September Feast.
I could do something briefly.
Okay.
So it was a great experience meeting the officers. I'm quite sure we all had a lovely time interacting with them more, learning a little bit more about why they came to Simsbury to work. The cruiser that we had to get stuffed, it wasn't a lot of people that stuffed it, but we did get some items. Also I want to give a thank you to the UPS store guy because I went there last minute to get copies of the flyer, and he said that he gave them to us for free, so we didn't have to pay for them. But so as I was walking around September Feast passing them out, a lot of folks said they weren't on Facebook or anything like that, or looking at any of doing any social media. They haven't checked the website or anything like that. So we just have to figure out another way of how to reach people so that they can be able to to participate. We did take a couple cash donations as well. Officer Miranek, am I messing his name up?
No, you're right.
Okay, Officer Miranek was, he actually put a sign up right at the entrance, letting folks know that if they want to make a monetary donation, they can. I'm not exactly sure how much came after I had took off, but we still had, it was a great time. We had a lot of kids come in and see the cruiser. Actually got to be like a long line, about 5:36 around that time. The traffic picked up with the guys, and the kids were really happy about getting in the cruiser, getting the experience, trying to figure out how to get out of the cruiser. Let's see, what else? I took a couple pictures, and those that weren't too crappy because of the sunlight, I forwarded on to you. But
I appreciate those.
yeah,
Good pictures.
we had a great time. So
Thank you.
I have a comment on it, too. I think, Kadisha, one of the best lines of the day was when there was a small child who climbed into the back of the cruiser and sat on the seat there. And the mother looked in and said, "This is the last time I ever want to see you sitting in the
yeah,
It was
that
so,
was.
so appropriate. Cash contributions, if people wanted to do that, or if they still want to do that, who do they get made out to, or is it check, who does it go to? How can they do it?
It was just plain old cash is what they did, and then it just got delivered with the goods, as my understanding, to the Simsbury Social Services
Right.
Food Bank.
Mhm. But if someone wanted to, they can make the check out to social services.
Simsbury Social Services,
Mhm.
okay. And still send it in
Mhm.
to the town hall, or?
I would say Kristen Formanek.
Okay, you have an address though, it's,
Oh,
She has a mailbox here, so you can send it here.
okay.
to the
I was gonna say, I don't know
town hall.
the address.
Yeah, 933 Hotmail Street, just here, yeah. She's based out of Vino Hall,
Yep.
but she has mail that's delivered here.
Okay.
933 Hot Meadow Street,
Yeah.
Simsbury Social Services.
Yep.
Great, okay, thank you.
It was very nice to see some of the donations, that people had, either went to the site or heard what was needed, because there were some sort of non-traditional, non-perishable items, like toiletries, which they seem to be very much in need of now. It was nice to see. And there was the equivalent of maybe 12 feet of grocery bags, all lined up. So it was a nice amount to collect.
Awesome. That's great.
All right. The next item is the chairman's report. We had the promotion ceremony at the Simsbury Meadows, and it was very nice. And now Commissioner Schweizer and Commissioner Long and I were there. It was nice because it was such a big venue, and so more people could come. I think it was just a nice ceremony. Also, I had the opportunity to meet with the chief, the town manager, and Tom Roy, who is the head of Public Works, and express our concerns about facilities. I know at our last meeting it kind of just came up briefly. So at this point, we explained what we were hoping to have, which is a short-term plan to address our current needs, as well as a long-term plan, 3-year, 5-year, 10-year layout, like our long-term goals. So I am supposed to check in with Mr. Roy on September 22nd to see where he is, because he was going to talk to Tecton, which is the company that did the initial survey. So that's kind of where it's at. We're waiting until September 22nd, and then hopefully we'll have more information to tell you what the next step of the plan is to determine where we go from there. And that is the end of the chairman's report. Next is the chief's report.
Thank you. I wanted to thank everybody who participated and were able to join in on the September 11, 20 years later remembrance in front of Town Hall this past Saturday. If you were not able to participate and you want to see the taping of it, it's available on Simsbury Community Television. It's up there now already. And then when we're able to, we will post a link to that directly on our Facebook page at Simsbury CT Police Department.
Chief, a lot of people to thank there, but I just want to reiterate to you and your staff here, fantastic job. I felt like there was a great mix of speakers at the event, well represented, and it covered a lot of different aspects of 9/11, whether it was just the specifics of Flight 93 or, varying perspectives from the community. And so anyway, really appropriate and well done. So hats off to you guys.
Thank you very much. I agree that the words that were said there were very meaningful. I watched it again today because I think that the speakers had some very interesting and poignant things to say that are relative to 2021 as well. Thank you. There have been no new motor vehicle thefts. I hate to even say that. Since our last meeting, so we're still at 9 thefts for this calendar year. What we haven't really spoken a whole lot about, number-wise anyways, is the amount of documented entries into cars where things were either stolen or things were moved around. And those numbers as well are down compared to the last year. So we had a total documented number of 199 separate incidences in 2020 where cars were entered into. And to date, right now in 2021, there have been 34. So I hope we sort of continue with this trend. And that's all I have for my report.
Yeah, okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
And Tanisha, can I just ask you that there's a conference that you put out on the 23rd of September that's has to do with car thefts and kind of a deep dive study into it. Can you remind me who's the entity that's putting that on?
I know there's UConn and there's one other individual, I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head, but I know UConn is part of this study that's going on. So they're going to be reviewing the data.
Yeah.
Was it CCM also? UConn and CCM or no?
I don't know. I don't believe it was CCM.
And just out of curiosity, so were departments contacted about this, or is this just an?
I actually received it 3 different ways. One was from Tanisha.
Yeah. Great.
Oh, I'm
Thanks
sorry,
for
I'm
putting
trying
it
to
up,
look up.
Tanisha.
Da-da-da. Oh, it's tiny little print, you guys.
No, you just passed it over at the top.
You can read that?
Oh, keep going.
That's all.
So IMRP,
Okay.
that's who it is.
Oh.
I had a question. There's been some talk about perhaps a community service dog, part of the department. Could you tell us a little more about that?
Sure, yep. We have it on the new business section, or unless you wanted to.
That's fine, I'll wait. Whatever.
Has everyone had a chance to look at the consolidated monthly and the preliminary monthly activity reports? Any questions, thoughts, concerns?
I had one on family violence, but I think the guys kind of talked to me about that at the at the Southern Cruiser event. I think there were 6 more. Let me see if I can find it. See, now I'm like, you're right.
2 non-violent and 5 violent.
5 total.
Was it on the monthly?
Oh.
It was
period.
family violence that had increased.
Oh, got it, yeah. 5.
Yeah. So there were 5, but I thought I saw it had increased.
Yeah, so page 2 of this one, the
Yeah.
second page. It
Oh,
is,
domestic, there it is,
Yep.
yep.
so 9 this period, or July of this year compared to 3 of the year before.
And so were those, like, intimate partner violence or
So,
instances with children and family?
Family household. So
Okay.
any of that relationship with family household.
Okay.
People living together, related by blood, marriage.
And how many of those resulted in an arrest? Of you offhand?
I do not know how many of those, but it kind of looks like, well, there's 11 for the month for arrests, but that could be anything.
Yeah, okay. And then my last question regarding that, when the families are involved in these situations, do we refer them to social services or the Office of Family Advocates so that they can get assistance or know how to
Yeah.
handle anything happening against them.
Yeah, so there's various different referrals that we do. Every once in a while directly to social services, but not as often as a regular referral to the Office of the Victim Advocate. So we always refer them through the way of a card. But if the incident rises to a certain level, we do a lethality assessment. And right there on scene, we will then make a phone call to a local shelter and try to connect the victim with a counselor right away, right there, for further assessment to see if we can make arrangements for services to bring them to a safe place.
I'm just curious how many of those resulted in an arrest.
Yeah, we
I know
can, we can follow up on that to see
Okay.
how many. Sure, absolutely.
So Chief, just curious, are there any trends that you end up seeing on these sorts of cases? You know, the spike in the heat or the summer months or things of that nature that, you know, cause this? I imagine it's a sine wave, but are there things that you're like, okay, this is expected because of X?
Yeah, so in general, we can expect that along with other activity in the warmer weather. We can expect that. But around the holidays, it's often very difficult and challenging for families. So sometimes we see a little bit of a spike then. In general, it's kind of consistent for us throughout the year. You know, we are lucky in the sense that we don't have a large number of those types of calls, but we certainly have our share of those.
Yeah.
I had a question, if you don't mind. Under alarms, I notice there's a largest drop of any of these things is in intrusion alarms this year versus last. And I'm just curious, you know, what are intrusion alarms? Are they automatic? Are they called in? You know, what are they? And then how many of them turn out to be somehow a false alarm?
So how the alarms work in town here is a call cannot come directly from an automated system, a security system at somebody's house to the police department. It has to go to a vendor or a service company. So it goes to them and then they call us and they provide us with that information. Where the alarm is, if anybody entered a code, if there was an improper code, if somebody was on scene, how we can get in touch with somebody, you know, a bunch of information. And then we go to those. And I would have to say that, you know, 99% is probably a safe number to say that they are false. And we will respond to all of those. And if somebody calls and says it's, you know, an accident, and we will check in with them as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. The next item on our agenda is new business. The first is public communication discussion. After our last meeting, I think I mentioned at the time that I was disappointed with the way that public audience has been used to go after individuals, whether it's officers or commissioners or just people in town, and that it had gotten away from the intent of what I believe public audience was meant for. I reached out to the town attorney to determine what, if any, requirements our commission has to have public audience. And I have a legal opinion, and I wanted to share it with you all. Basically, there is no generally applicable rule that requires it. There are rules that do require the Board of Selectmen to have public audience, but not us. The charter section and the rules of procedure do not apply to us. They only apply to the Board of Selectmen. So any requirement for public audience of this commission would be through policies and procedures that this commission itself put into place and could choose to change. So I wanted to make you guys aware of that. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, that's interesting because I also did some research on it. Yeah, and there's really only, the Board of Selectmen is the only board that has a public audience requirement in the town, or in any town for that matter. And as a member of this commission for many years, I've become, you know, deeply concerned about what's happened sometimes in the public audience. Sometimes it can be very, very useful in conveying information, but then we have other methods of getting information to the department and to us. It can be also very useful at other times, but we have, I think it was 2015, we adopted a very formal complaint procedure to make sure that anyone who has a complaint about something that may have happened in the department or concerning an officer in the department can be made to the department. And then we are informed of that in our procedures, that we have overview over that process, and that the commission has citizen input, in final say into how those are resolved. I think we have a very good and solid procedure in place to protect people who want to, make their comments known and get them to us. There are ways to do that. We don't need to have other time spent on it. And I've been concerned that sometimes that tool turns into be something that can be a nasty weapon of negativity and reputation assassination. And I have a real problem with that, because it's just not right, in my opinion, because there's no opportunity for anyone to reply to it. There's no opportunity for people to defend themselves. And anything can be said, and sometimes is. So despite the fact that there is a lot of usefulness to a public audience, and that's why we adopted the procedure to have one many years ago, this commission itself, and adopted that procedure. I think it's time that we simmer down a little bit, because we can always reintroduce it if we want to, at this point, not have it for a period of time. We can do that, and we can reintroduce it at any time that we want. And I'd like to have a little time on it myself, because it's very difficult to, by innuendo and rumor and whatever, to come up with accusations that accuse absolutely individual people on a very public, broad-based basis of things. I just don't think it's fair, and I don't think it's right. So, we worked hard to provide the public with lots of avenues of communication. And I think they're there, and I think they exist. And I'm comfortable that we can continue to have these meetings, but without a public audience agenda item. As long as the commission continues to do, we continue to do our job of overseeing, what happens in the department, and ensuring that there are adequate avenues for private citizens to have a full and timely review of any questions or complaints that they have. And I think that exists, and as long as it does, I would like to move that the public audience be removed as a standing agenda item from the SPC, Simsbury Police Commission meetings, effective immediately.
I'll second that motion.
Okay,
Thank you.
do we want to have a discussion?
I'll add a point here. I too have been very concerned over the last year, sitting on these meetings, that public discussion has not been beneficial to the conduct of the meetings, and I've witnessed personal attacks on police and on board members, and I think it's counterproductive. My concern going forward, if we erase the venue there, that we're diminishing the public's ability to communicate with the board. So my concern has been, hey, let's not do away with it. However, if we have other proper means to communicate with the police department and with the board, I'm all for it. And evidence for that is each week we read correspondence from the public. I'm seeing that we do have positive communications, and as Commissioner Long pointed out, we have a formal process for complaints. And so I guess in summary, I would say, hey, I'm willing to do away with the public concern here if we recognize that there are other venues for the public to connect to the police department and still be able to shape it accordingly and have an open, honest dialogue registering complaints, concerns, compliments, etc. So that's where I stand on it.
You look like you were gonna say something.
I'm torn, obviously. What Commissioner Long said, there's plenty of opportunity for information to get to us. I don't have any issue with that. The fact that we're not required to, or any other board or commission in the town is required to have a public audience as part of the formal agenda is, I was not aware of that. To me, I just thought it was just typical business. So in order for some consistency, I could see doing away with public audience.
All right, and likewise, my concern was making sure that the residents still had a way to be able to reach us if they needed to. So as long as they do it through correspondence or through the police department, I'm fine with that as well.
Okay. In that case, I will have a vote on the motion to do away with public audience for the Simsbury Police Commission meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. The next item on our agenda is new business and the service dog.
Yeah.
Get it together,
I think
sorry.
this brings some smiles to some faces. So we have been looking at the possibility of having a service dog here. And the model is very similar to a service dog that is being used in about 5 or 6 different police departments in Connecticut, and then in other places like Massachusetts. A police service dog is not a traditional police canine dog, whatever you may want to call it. It does not track people. It does not do a patrol function as a force multiplier. It does not find a suspect. It does not sniff out drugs. What it does do is it complements our existing roles that we have here, our responsibilities and the tasks that we do. It quickly removes social barriers and creates opportunities for positive engagement. So just imagine, anybody in this room walking a cute dog down Iron Horse Boulevard. You're going to have people smile and ask what your dog's name, how old is your dog. There's that immediate interaction, and we believe the same thing's going to happen with our police officers. So somebody who may be apprehensive to approach a police officer now has another really quick opportunity to do that. These service dogs provide comfort to victims and to witnesses, sort of setting them at ease a little bit to be able to talk about what happened, explain circumstances, ask for some needs that they have. It encourages cooperation, compliance, and participation. It supports social, emotional needs of the community and the department members. So the same thing that dog will do for the community can do for the members of the police department as well. Dogs reduce your stress, and then they will assist or can assist during and after a crisis. So whether that's assisting community members or that is assisting, again, department members working through a crisis. So we're currently in the sort of the stage of how feasible is this? What is this going to cost the town? What are the different segments of it that we have to work out before bringing it forward? But Officer Jamie Ball has done a considerable amount of work for us on this, has done a presentation to the command staff. Most of us have had opportunities to speak with these service dog handlers. One was at Camp Current this summertime. We were able to see 4 or 5 of those dogs sort of in action, and all the kids want to run over and talk with the dogs, and what ends up happening is they talk with the officers. So we're building that trust and that communication right away. So the sort of the main things that we're looking at right now is how much is this going to cost us, and how can we get the funds for that? Just real briefly, there is an organization called Puppies Behind Bars. This is sort of the leading organization in this area where we are interested in getting a dog from. And these dogs are raised and trained behind bars in a prison, and they're raised and trained by prisoners. So it's a great avenue for them. It's a great skill to learn for people who may be released from prison. Also a great, they're getting the same satisfaction that anybody will have for raising a dog, for training a dog. And what happens is they give these dogs away to police departments, to veterans, to those who need service dogs, and it's at no cost. And so what would happen is our officer would go down there for 2 weeks, go into the prisons and train with the prisoners and the dogs, and then the dog and that officer would bond, and then they would then be a team moving forward. So we're really interested in it. We think it's doing some really positive things around the state. And, welcome to your feedback on this. And then a presentation will be forthcoming to you, so you can have more information about how this would work. We're not looking to create a new position. It's used to supplement the already existing roles that we have today.
And do you think, Chief, that this dog would belong to one, maybe 2 officers, or could any officer in the department take that dog for a walk and interact with the community?
So the model is basically one handler per dog. It just seems to be best that way. But I would have to say that dog will be sort of around the department, will be obviously well acclimated to all the other officers, but it will have one main handler. We have a role here, and there's different models in other places, like Naugatuck, for instance. There's an officer who is on patrol, and that dog is with that patrol officer. There are others that are very similar to our community services officer, like in Middletown. That officer performs very similar roles. So that officer is out at meetings with the public, with different groups in town, seniors, the library, our kids, schools. So it'll just supplement what that officer is doing, and we think it's a really great pair.
Ms. Cole, could you put your...
I think there's another opportunity to involve the community by saying, help support our community dog. And I don't know if it's dog treats or it's bags of dog food or whatever the case may be, but I think there's a way to involve the community too that might be worthy of some brainstorming.
Absolutely. Over the years, we have had a lot of people approach us, wanting us to have either a traditional dog, most recently this type of dog, and there are a ton of people, a ton of businesses and organizations in this community that would support that would help that. And then also, to almost automatically create another bond there between the police department and individual families, businesses, organizations.
So Chief, as a Navy veteran with time in combat and canines, I would say that everything you've espoused about the benefits of the canines, I would multiply by 10. It's an absolutely, it's a total force multiplier. And to the Commissioner's point here, even if we had to make it a volunteer piece where the community is helping out, offsetting the cost of the dogs, and there'll be some logistical challenges, concerns with allergies or concerns with what cruisers and that sort of thing, but whatever it takes to make it work, I would say the benefits are going to far outweigh any detraction from having a canine or multiple canines that are part of the force. Full steam ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
When we were at September Feast, it was a lot of the little kids were really psyched to go get in the fire truck or sit on the snowplow, and they were a little less excited to get in the back of a police car. And we noted that if we had a service dog, that's another way to build that community relationship that's less scary than just traditional policemen. So I think you guys are very correct on building community relations, but there's another layer if we do it at public events where people can come and meet the dog, and again, then you start talking to the officers.
I would even recommend a uniform for the dog and a camera that we could live stream to the public if they wanted to tap into the canines. I'm not kidding. I think whatever we can do to exploit the benefits.
I think the social emotional piece from the dogs would be great. Like, I've seen them in action at hospitals with the elderly and how they interact, and how they're just these big old balls of fur that are just so, they are really, they're huge, and so it just falls right off. So I think that's a great opportunity to bring to the community as well. So
budgetarily, like, when do we have to submit our budget? I know it's coming up not too long.
Right, so preliminary stuff is in December.
Okay,
Sometimes it's been pushed back a little bit to November, but
okay,
it would probably look like January has to be some sort of formal submission, but we don't have that path yet.
okay.
But, we are looking at ways to do this much sooner than
I was gonna say, can
the
we?
budgetary process.
Okay.
So, in looking at when the puppies will be available because of their growth and their training, and looking at the possibility of putting on that class, we are looking at much closer. We're looking at potentially getting this working in November. So that's where we're looking at what's the possibility of being able to fund this program much sooner than through the budget year, because we don't know what's going to happen next year with the availability of puppies. There is a trend that is moving in this direction, that other police departments want this, so the availability may be very, very low. So we're just in the process right now to see how we could potentially secure this program much sooner.
Well, Chief, echoing the other commissioner's comments, I think it's supposed to be the, go for it. Absolutely.
Very good.
I concur.
Thank you.
Any other business anyone would like to raise? All right,
I think the move that we adjourn.
do I have a second? In that case, the meeting is adjourned.